What you're about to hear is the third and final segment in a three-part audio slidecast, documenting a conversation between Debra Pothier, a senior education AEC marketing manager for Autodesk, Dave Fano, a professor with the architecture department at Columbia University, and some of his students who participated in a special design to fabrication workshop Professor Fano and his colleague Joshua Emig developed for the students. For Debra's conversation with Professor Fano, please listen to Part 1. Part 3 opens with student Ben Carr's response to Debra's request for a brief description of his team's project for the Design to Fabrication class, which Ben calls a thumbnail project.
A thumbnail project, which is basically taking some kind of inspiration from either an unbuilt project or a sketch that had come up in other architects' work. So we all sort of went around and looked at on the internet and books and things like that, and tried to find examples of projects that were exciting in some way, and find a way that we could capitalize on that and make it our own and have our own sort of detailing of this original concept. So what our group actually did, our blog was Orchestration FO8, but we had an original sort of scheme that was from a project by foreign office architects for a swimming pool, for a roof sort of structural system, which wasn't really a unitized system or a curtain wall at all. It was really just sort of a formal gesture that we liked.
Mm-hmm.
So we sort of took that and completely translated it into a curtain wall, which is like, completely, taking it, putting it in a completely different way, completely different orientation, and eventually completely different form, just because it had come out of this original sort of teardrop shape that we liked, and then it sort of translated into this whole different thing, which we have complete authorship of now, even though originally it was somebody else's project.
In the next segment, Joe Wangbo discusses the class field trip to Maloya Laser in Comac, Long Island. They are a family business going back 2 generations and have evolved into a specialty metal fabrication firm. The company has become heavily involved in laser cutting and have projects in architectural exteriors, interior finishes, railings, furniture, signage, jewelry, and more. In this passage, Joe talks about the benefits of interacting directly with the fabricators as compared to a traditional design-build course.
So it was different from what I think a traditional design-build studio would be more like. Is definitely you had the interaction with the fabricators, and it wasn't, in prior I've had design-build experience, and what we did there was more like we just kind of figured out like in our heads like, oh, let's just try this and let's just try that, without having the sort of the better knowledge and more the real world situation where you actually would go out to a fabricator and have a dialogue with those people. And I think that's really important, and I think that's what made this class, I think, actually better than an actual design build.
Next, Ben adds comments about the importance of working closely with the fabricator and cites a specific example.
One of the fabricators we went to was, the name is Maloya Laser, and they just do laser cutting of metal. So it was great to see exactly the kind of parameters that they deal with. It was things like how big the beds of the laser cutters are, and how big the sheet metal comes in standard sizing and things like that. So that factors into the whole design process of you don't want to design something that's going to be impractical just because it happens to be 6 inches longer, because that's the arbitrary number you gave to it. If it can fit within these particular parameters, and you can embed that kind of logic into the modeling process, then it'll streamline everything down the line. So if you know ahead of time what your parameters are going to be for the manufacturing, then it helps tremendously once you actually try to get it built.
Debra's conversation with the students now shifts back to Chris Powers for the final portion of this slidecast. In the segment that follows, Chris responds to Debra's request that he comment on what he sees as the future of building information modeling, especially as it applies to working with other disciplines such as fabricators.
I'm really looking forward to the use of this BIM, building information modeling, which Revit touches on, and I'm really hoping that this Inventor program kind of gets incorporated into that, and having almost a seamless interface between fabricators, architects, engineers, and contractors, and really kind of giving them this common language to speak with, because just very simply by understanding the software and how these pieces gets put together, I can understand how the fabricators can put them together, and he can understand how I've designed this because he knows how the program works. And he knows, oh, well, if you could do this, it's only slightly different. It gives you the same look, but it's easier to build. And by using that kind of common language, I think it gets rid of a lot of the misconceptions, a lot of the differences between the two different fields, and is really going to lead to hopefully just kind of a seamless interface that we can go back and forth using the same program, same file, that you just trade the file back and forth doing small little alterations and really be able to communicate really effectively. And that's really the key. So this kind of fabrication process is a communication, and to just give another tool for that communication is really, really great experience.
To conclude, Debra asked Chris what advice he has for students entering the architectural program.
The biggest advice I would give them is in the couple years that I've worked as an experience, one of the things I've learned is the construction industry is really kind of segmented as much as it is dependent on each other. So contractors have extreme problems with architects. Architects have problems with engineers. And this is all based on the fact that each person is focused on their field and doesn't really understand the others. So as an incoming architect, I would really recommend to just delve in as deeply as you can into how fabricators work, how contractors work, how engineers work. And by understanding that, you can get rid of a lot of the simple miscommunications, misunderstandings that really kind of ruin a relationship that's almost key and really essential to how a building is developed. One of my best experiences was over the course of 7 or 8 months working with a contractor on a middle school project in D.C. I was able to understand that simple things that designers often do, such as moving a wall 2 feet to add some design space, can have drastic implications for a contractor and can mean 2 or 3 weeks worth of work. And to understand that and to be sensitive to those kind of issues on all different scales, you can really kind of develop a really good relationship between the architects and engineers and really kind of become a really seamless design and get your work built faster and better and with less complications and less cost in the end, because a lot of costs are created by changing things and contractors wanting to up the bid and so forth. So if that was that would be the one thing I would try and recommend to students, is just understand the different fields outside their own as much as possible to kind of coordinate that.
For more information, visit www.autodesk.com/edcommunity.